In this module, we're going to spend some time looking at ad types. So you see on the new ad screen, we've reached here by clicking My Ads and then Create New Ad Unit. And we're back to this area that shows us ad sizes. Now, the ads appearing in this box are those that are considered recommended by Google. If we click this pull down, they have different choices: recommended, horizontal, vertical, rectangular, responsive, custom, and link ads. So we're going to first take a look at the recommended ads, which are these, and the very first one is responsive. This is a recommended size because responsive means that it resizes itself based on the size of the device, which means that mobile phones, for example, that have a smaller screen will get a smaller ad that will actually fit the width of those screens, and tablets, same thing. So if you choose, for example, this leaderboard, which is pretty wide, 728 pixels across, and then you try to display it on a mobile phone, it won't work. It'll be chopped off because the mobile phone is only about 500 wide or so, depending on what kind of phone you're using, or sometimes 350. So the recommended ad size for most situations these days, particularly if you have only one site that has a responsive component of it. So in other words, your website changes its shape and size based on the device that's accessing it, then you're going to want to use responsive web units in most cases. And we'll get a little bit more into that later. But for desktop websites, or if you have a separate set of code for your desktop than your mobile, then you can certainly use these other selections. And ads that are only 320 across, or probably you wouldn't want to use the 300 by 600, but this 300 by 250 or this 336 potentially, and 320, sometimes you can get away with these for mobile phones, although 336 sometimes is pushing it and you might get a little bit of it cut off. Leaderboard ads can be good in certain situations. I'll show you some examples of those when we look at websites. The large rectangle has an advantage over other ads in that whenever there's ad inventory available that Google considers to be the best paying ad that fits this 336, it'll show the 336 by 280 box ad. This is kind of the biggest box you can get that's actually a square. Now this 300 by 600 of course is bigger, but it's bigger because it's longer, it's not a square. But well, this is actually not a proper square either, it's a rectangle, but anyway, it's kind of the boxy looking at 336 by 280. But the cool thing about it is that if Google finds a better paying ad that's actually this 300 by 250 size, it will put the 300 by 250 in this 336 by 280 space, and there'll be just a little bit of a white border around it. But what that means is that when you set aside a space on your website that is this size, and I use this very, very often, then your chances of optimizing the revenue for that little space on your site is greater because it can take either the 336 or the 300, and it's kind of unique in that the other ad sizes don't actually do that well. But in terms of the companies who are creating ads, the reason these ads are recommended is because companies by and large create more ad inventory in these sizes than they do in the other sizes. So a lot of times when there's more inventory out there, in other words, there's more ads vying for that same spot on your website, that means there's more competition and it drives the prices up so you can make more money from those ad types. However, there are a lot of other kinds of sizes, and some of them may be appropriate for the layout of your website. So let's just look at horizontal banners, for example. So here's like a great big banner. It's 970 across and 250 tall. You may see these, and this is another situation where if you use one of these and there are no 970 ads available for your site at that time, then it might display a smaller ad like a 728 by 90. It might stick in there. But here's a common one. This is sort of called a half banner. You see these on a lot of websites and kind of buried farther down in the article, for example. The leaderboards, as it says, sometimes you see these in sites. next to the logo at the very, very top of the site, which incidentally is a very bad place to put an ad, but it's common for people to do that. You also see these sometimes above the article titles or right below the article titles, which is not a terribly bad place to put it. And then, of course, there's some of these that are smaller and tinier that are typically used for mobile sites. Generally speaking, especially in desktop, the smaller the ad, the less money it makes. And even in mobile, that's the case. You're much more likely to make money on from a 300 by 250 on mobile than this one that's wide but skinny. Let's take another look here at vertical banners. Vertical banners, as you've seen from your own experience on websites, typically appear in the side rail or the sidebar of websites, either on the left or the right. And they can be pretty valuable because they allow some very big ad copy. And anytime you dedicate that much space, it catches the eye of users. So you see these in the sidebars, and I'll show you if you're going to use a sidebar. I often recommend this one, and I recommend that it gets placed next to the article text, sort of in the middle of the page. And again, the skinnier ones just do not do as well. I mean, some people tend to stack up these little ones and make kind of piles of them in the sidebars, or put some of these side by side. And the problem is it starts looking really busy. Users don't like busy looking websites, and they are not going to bother to look through all of those different ads that are kind of jumbled up like a mosaic and click on them. So you actually don't make much money if you try to do things like that, even if you think getting more ads in front of them is better. And then the rectangular sizes, we sort of talked about those. Again, the smaller ones I don't recommend. The bigger, these two, and particularly this one, the biggest one, I highly recommend. Now, responsive ads, again, this responsive is kind of one size fits all because it adjusts itself based on the kind of device. Occasionally, you'll find that the responsive ad will not always give you the optimum size that you're looking for. For example, sometimes you'll put responsive ads on and it'll always give you a 728 by 90 banner on a desktop. And there are many times that I personally feel like the 336 performs better than the 728. So there are ways that you can force the 336 to appear even when you have a responsive ad type, and often that's a good strategy. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Responsive links. Let's go ahead and quickly talk about links. Link ads look like menus. They're a list of words and they look like a menu, but they're actually an ad. And when a user clicks on that, you don't earn money on the first click. You click on the menu item and then it takes you to another screen that shows you more ad choices. And then when a user clicks on one of those ad choices, then you get paid. So link ads are one more way to get ads in front of users on your website. They don't pay nearly as much as the other ads, but some people put them on there and are somewhat successful at getting users to click on them. Unfortunately, menu ads often look like website menus, and that's why users go to those, and they're a little bit dismayed that they're seeing an ad when they get to the other side of it. So it just kind of depends on personal preference. I personally don't use link ads very often, but if you're really needing to drive a little bit more revenue out of the site, sometimes they work well for that. Custom size ads, you can actually specify your own size, and then Google will try to find ad inventory that fits your size, but you have to be aware that a lot of times doing that takes you out of the running for a lot of the most popular ads that are being created by advertising companies. So let's take a look at the next field on the screen. This is text versus display ads. Text are just as it sounds, it's just text, and display means you can get graphical ads. Some of them are animated, some of them are just pictures or images. Display ads and text ads, choosing this option almost always gives you the best payout because that lets Google decide if there's a text and a display ad competing, it'll pick the one that pays the most. Now, there may be cases where you can do your own testing, experimenting, where you find that on your site, display ads by themselves only perform pretty well, or sometimes even more commonly that text ads by itself performs financially better than display ads. Matched content is sort of like a related post thing. I won't go into that, but it's not really a strategy for monetization at this point. It's a strategy for keeping people on your site. So typically, if you don't know what to do, you want to pick text and display ads. That's recommended as it says here on the screen. And then the text ad style allows you to choose different fonts and different colors. And it's very much advisable to try to match the color scheme in your website to the color of the ads. And typically the best and smartest thing to do is to have a white background, kind of like this, a white background, no border. Like this one has a border, but typically border is not that good because borders make ads look like ads, and typically you want them not to look so much like an ad. And then you want black, usually for the text and the URL, and then sometimes you want to match the title to the color on your website and the URL to the color on your website. So if you have sort of a reddish website, or like in this case, I had a bluish kind of a website, and so I matched the title of blue to the title in the ad, and that's because all the links on my bluish website were in blue, and so I also naturally I wanted an ad link to appear in the same color, and that just is motivational for people to click on when it looks more like a link that's on the page and less like a commercial ad. That's kind of what you're going for in this case, and very often I do this. As you can see, I make the text and the URL of black or dark colors of gray so that there's less focus on them, but not always. Sometimes I do something like this, like the nursing site you saw earlier. We made the URL and the title the same color, and both of those colors incidentally match the theme of the website. So when you create a new color scheme, you can actually give it a name like this, like I've called this one nursing, and I've saved it so that when I create other ads for the same website or other ads for a website with the same color scheme, I don't have to go find where the colors are again. Incidentally, if you don't know what color to put there, what you can do is click on the color itself and pick from a range of colors. The other thing, I have a nice little Chrome add-in. It's called Color Pick Eyedropper, and if you use the Chrome browser, you can just click on this thing and then hover over any area of your screen to find out what color that is. And if you click on it, it gives you the color code, like in this case C72730, and you can just copy that and then use that and paste it in wherever you might need it, like in different themes or plugins. So we click an ad type, then we create and click an ad style. I don't recommend using any of the ad styles or even the default one. The default one is good, except that you want to make sure that the title color matches your website. Custom channels are primarily used to group like ads together. So if you're trying to figure out something like you want to have ads that are all placed in the same part of a website, or they have some other common feature like they're all of the news part of your website or all of the tips part of your website, and you want to know how tips ads are performing versus how news ads are performing, you can create a channel called tips and then assign your tips ads to that channel. And then in the reporting features, you can report on just how tips are doing by themselves. And then backup ads, finally, sometimes AdSense doesn't have an ad to display in the space that you allot it. And so you can either show blank space or you can create your own ad code to fill in that area. And that's something that you can research online how to do it. Just search on that, and there's a lot of good resources that will pop up on how to fill in backup ads for AdSense. And then once you've done that, you can click Save and Get Code. And we've done this before, but we click Save. And of course, this time we forgot to do a name, but let me just type in a test for the name just so that I can illustrate this one more time. Click Save and Get Code, and then the code is actually created for you with everything that you've stipulated before. You want to just leave this at asynchronous. These days, don't even bother with synchronous. This is just it will help your web page load a lot faster if you do that. Again, you click anywhere in the box and then you can copy this. And then in another module, we'll talk about how, after you copy it, what you do with the code, how you get it onto your website.